coming to work on a Monday.
No, this is Talk Radio 790 KBC. This is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show, and I'm not a counseling center. People, have you ever been to a pine cone juggling show where the juggler dropped half the pine cones and kept saying, whoops? Well, I have, and that's how this radio show is going to be tonight. Tonight, we have a woman taking shorthand notes of everything I say, including all of my numerous pronunciations. I understand when she was a juror on the infamous mistrial in Rosa Santos Rosenstein versus Glickman, she used so many steno pants to take notes, the Los Angeles Superior Court forced future jurors to write on the back of duplicate copies of summary judgment motions for the remainder of calendar year 2018. Not since episode 17 has Molly Machete graced the studio in a less than graceful manner, knocking over the desk upon which our microphones are. They're two connected in the beginning of that fateful broadcast.
Is there a reason why you didn't mention the mistrial was caused when Remus Helms and I rode our stallions into the courthouse to joust for juror foreperson?
I didn't want to embarrass you on live air or anything.
Embarrass me? That got me 269,421 followers on Twitter, the live feed for dimwits. Most human resources investigators learn things there, like answer in deposition. You never heard of gay bashing if the case involves repeated and highly offensive taunting from coworkers on the basis of the plaintiff's sexual orientation.
Interesting. I was wondering where those brilliant deposition answers have been coming from.
Sometimes I dwit out a gem likely to drum up business for us alleged neutral workplace investigators. I say something like the ADA, I've heard of that, or in terms of accommodating an employee for a disability, when asked in deposition why you failed to grant but one absence when the diabetic employee lost consciousness and had to be rushed to the hospital, say, accommodate an employee for disability? I'd never do a thing like that.
Last time you were on this show, you disclosed you were paid by both the employer and the employee's family when you were investigating Hanita Orchid Helms' death by workplace boredom, that whole hoot. I didn't realize you were also creating business yourself by dwitting out bad human resource advice.
Mr. Gerber, it's not my problem if some people are dumb enough to take my jokes seriously. You, of all people, should understand.
In the Hanita Orchid Helms case, there was a lot of conflicting evidence by generally unreliable people and even more unreliable workers' compensation doctors about whether Hanita Orchid Helms was really dead. And then there were sightings of her buying plastic orchids at the Dollar Tree on Jefferson.
I was under the impression you and Starlight resurrected her on episode 28 of this show.
Rumors spread.
Actually, it was a workplace training seminar. They said that if an employee dies at work, no biggie, they can always be resurrected. Somebody raised their hand and asked where the seminar provider got their information, and they said episode 28 of the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show.
Yeah, the legal discussions here are real, but all the rest...
At any rate, I'm glad Hanita is back on her father's cosplay ostrich ranch in Sun Valley, drinking crank corn tonic during her afternoon domino games.
Wow, that sounds quaint.
I don't know. There are all those creepy cosplay actors like geriatric pumpkins surrounding Hanita and Mistress Lubov parading around the ostriches cracking her whip.
The way you're putting it, this sounds rather dreadful. But the elephant in the room is, how do you know all this?
I was there.
This may be an odd question, but were you in costume?
Of course I was, dressed as the Wicked Witch of the East. Do you think I learned the art of sub-rosa investigation yesterday?
Well, there could be a conflict of interest with Remus Helms sponsoring the show and all, so I won't ask you if you were investigating...
The size of that man's thing.
Seriously, Molly, that's no secret. There is some possibility afoot in Sun Valley, and Fontana will be rebranded 14 inches.
Not that. That man can't walk into a men's room without being ID'd. He has another thing going on.
He has vast worldwide enterprises. He has all sorts of things going on.
No, he has a thing.
I have certain limits on how many times I can mention Remus Helm's thing on this show.
You do?
Yes, there's only so much I can take.
I'm sure others feel the same way.
Let's change the subject.
Have you met Remus Helm's thing?
I most certainly have not.
I think he might be a skinlet.
There's no such thing as a skinlet who lives underground.
His thing is a cute little fuzzy creature.
Oh, this sounds rather obscene.
I'd like to get one of them for myself.
Please!
Have you heard of the one-eyed monster?
Heavens, I never thought you'd stoop to that level.
You can tell the one-eyed monster is related to Remus Helm's thing.
Well, maybe you can, but I don't want to.
At any rate, I had a detail on Remus Helm's thing.
This is workplace investigation, nonetheless, I presume.
It most certainly was. Remus Helm's thing had been accused of stealing the biggest, roundest, most spectacular ostrich eggs.
And you were disguised as the Wicked Witch of the East, and you were going to detect whether this was myth or reality?
Actually, I have a correction to make. I was more disguised as the Wicked Witch of Calabasas. You've probably seen her at the Commons.
Was the one-eyed monster in on the egg heist?
As things turned out, the thing was merely taking the ostrich eggs to the one-eyed monster who was bejeweling the eggs. They were going to make a special presentation to Hinata Helms on Valentine's Day.
I won't ask how much this little detail cost.
Practically nothing. Just enough to buy a red and white BMW Isetta.
Oh, those little three-wheel 1958 models go for about $20,000 to $50,000, depending on condition.
I wanted something I could drive around Arcadia and be seen in and not rip my scarf off. I had to pay $60 at auction.
We need to get down to business here. You apparently want my help bringing down a slave labor organization.
My findings, based upon very credible evidence, including witness statements under family oaths and the state of California, not to mention documentary evidence consisting of demonstratives by children depicting paid in the way of gratuity instead of legal tender.
Rather than listing out labels for your evidence, we need to get down to plastic knuckles.
Indeed.
I have several doubts about your narrative given the Hanita Orchid Helms debacle. I can hardly put my reputation of 25 years experience as a serious employee lawyer into an endeavor that, quite frankly, could embarrass both of us.
And the scripts on this show don't do that?
Well, our options are rather bleak. We can wait for a rambling live caller who adds nothing to the listener's entertainment, let alone education. Or we can proceed with an infomercial aimed at selling a rather bad product. Not my legal services, of course, but something on the order of Myron Alfombra, pronounced Madding's ever-growing Berber toupees that are actually nylon, but can be interchangeably used as a townhome floor.
You mean M&M?
Yes, an imposter appeared on episode 34 and said that was the spelling of Alfombra Etial's name.
The crazed hairdresser on fire must be frozen in his foul fumes.
You said it!
How about this? You provide legal insight on the slave labor operation that must be broken down into bits of bacon, stopped in its tracks like a flying mosquito infested with West Nile virus, and I'll help you with the malignancy of Myron Alfombra, pronounced Madding.
Well, did you hear the latest devious plunder of Alfombra, pronounced Madding?
Of course. I still keep in contact with Chap Shtick.
Even if you didn't, it's been front page news on all of the fake newspapers staffed by respected journalists from schools like Columbia.
As I understand things, Myron Alfombra, pronounced Madding, but spelled M&M, outright stole the most important database in the world, the one that was going to lead to a reunification of North and South Korea.
All right, you're listening to Karl Gerber, Workplace Lawyer Show. I am a real workplace lawyer. I'm hoping you all call me at the office about a real workplace case at 877-525-0700. Once again, for a serious employment lawyer in the office, 877-525-0700. That's 877-525-0700 if you have a real workplace problem. You had a crummy workplace investigation, maybe about sexual harassment, and the investigator didn't do their job, didn't make any conclusions, didn't actually interview witnesses, only looked at emails, only asked questions by email. Sometimes workplace investigators aren't neutral. And Molly Machete, as we know, gets paid by both sides. When we come back, we'll find out about this important database on the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show, Talk Radio 790 KBC.
In my chair, and I don't care to work the day away. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like morale is through the roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like I like coming to work on a Monday.
790 KBC. You're listening to Karl Gerber, Workplace Lawyer Show. I'm Karl Gerber, and I'm a real workplace lawyer. Before we broke, we had Molly Machete in studio, and she was telling me about this coverage of the whole Myron Alfombra, pronounced Manning, actually spelled M&M, where he outright stole the most important database in the world. And I'm going to tell you, Molly, story got a lot better coverage in the Sanitary. I don't usually read that rag, but in terms of information about the dynamic new field of sanitary napkin database management, they are obviously the most reliable source. It was reported Myron Alfombra, pronounced differently and spelled not a thing like it sounds, plans to use his ever-growing Berber technique on sanitary napkins so a woman can
Go through her entire menstrual career on one ever-growing tempumed sanitary napkin. Yeah. We've all heard the news. Who cares about the partial federal government shutdown? Alfombra's got the database.
Well, if Chap Shtick was charged with managing this database, how does that bode for him?
It does not bode well. He's beside himself. He can't even get out of bed, bow down, and sand any metal dorsals.
I wonder if I could have enlisted your aid, even if I didn't agree to help you with the slave labor case.
No comment.
Since we sort of covered my dilemma over and over again on this show, let's hear more about yours.
Let me tell you, after I collided into the digital billboard advertising the show in Lawndale, my insurance rates skyrocketed until I called Geico. I saved piles of money, and they even gave me my own creepy little doll.
Yikes! Don't give that to me!
Isn't she creepy? I don't know what to do with her.
Leave her in your car every night? That'll deter car theft, since you're still driving around in those vintage European three-wheelers.
We're gonna need disguises. Let's go down to Retail Slut on Melrose. You can get a top hat like Slash stole there, hide your face. I'll get a stand-up comedy t-shirt and look just like Robin Williams.
We have a problem. The establishment closed in 2005.
I am just not hip anymore. We'll never be able to infiltrate.
Focus your audio. We'll go to Jet Rag in the La Brea area and get your threads in order. You'll be a shape and a drape. You dig? Everything plus.
Mr. Gerber, your verses slated for Crashville. Maybe a red onion, completely off the cob. Noodle it out. We won't use my lead sled. Stop interviewing your brain.
Right on. We both know our groceries.
If we adopt this style of language, they'll think we're a bunch of washed-up middle-aged beatniks, and they'll be deferential, even cordial.
You think we've got the right vibe down to infiltrate a slave labor organization? I think they're more in the bling and cancer sticks.
Not this operation. They're really far out.
Do you think we should involve Remus Helms?
Mr. Gerber, that would be overkill.
I know he's a rather heavy hitter, but going up against a criminal enterprise?
No need to worry. I have a concealed weapons permit and my share of experience thanks to a humid little holding joint in Cuba. If we got Remus Helms involved, we could be responsible for a widely expanded family unable to care for themselves in the workplace of 2019.
I'll trust her judgment. We need to go in real old school. We'll be like Hepcats, original hipsters from the 40s and 50s. Wild jazz, a road trip across the country for no reason. We'll be elder beatniks by 1962.
It sounds super neat, but why?
Look at us. Multiple generations have passed us by.
Rats on the roof. I thought you were going to stop when you said we'd be like the original hipsters.
Not to change the subject, but how large is this illicit employer?
My preliminary count is 21 women, 14 men, and 6 children. The numbers have decreased.
Some of the slave laborers have escaped.
They have left the family.
Entire families are involved. Child labor laws are being violated. We better get on this right away. We can just leave these microphones on and hope the station plays some almighty 790 commercials, or oh no, more conservative talk radio. We better stick around here. Can we just call the police on this operation?
We need to meticulously plan our operation.
I thought I was here to provide legal advice.
Although my investigation is sanctioned by the California Department of Labor Standards Enforcement, they're not able to provide officers. Besides, this is a peaceful, loving operation.
It doesn't exactly fit the mold of slave labor.
No, it presents difficult legal, moral, and ethical dilemmas. That's why I'm enlisting your aid.
All right, let's start with the moral and ethical dilemmas. Those issues sometimes are above the law.
Although the children have often left by choice... Wait. I must tell you, the odd thing is the children are older than their parents.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You're trying to get me involved in a harebrained investigation on the level of deciding who will be foreperson by a joust on horseback in the jury room.
Now, that wasn't my idea.
This little operation where we're going to bust without the assistance of actual law enforcement, but with their sanction. What exactly is this labor being used for?
Meditation, spirituality, awful-tasting muffins sold at unauthorized booths at the Hollywood Farmers Market, yogi that'll bring your butt down about 16 sizes in a week.
And thus the ethical dilemma.
Children, 15 or younger, arrive at the farmer's market at 6 a.m. Their parents come at 5 a.m.
Wow, that's a labor violation. They can't start work before 7 a.m. except June 1st for Labor Day.
What does work consist of?
Well, presumably this would include setting up stalls in a farmer's market, tables, placing overpriced food out, cutting pieces of unwashed fruit with unwashed hands to thereby create stomach sickness for samplers, stuff like that.
What about conducting the exorcism of hate?
I'm not really familiar with that operation.
Negative energy must be purged. The vibe, the volume.
If this is a religious or spiritual practice, I'm not sure that's work.
Leading the ceremony is complex and physically exhausting. The parents need to save their energy for their sales of day-old bread.
Well, how exactly is the ceremony performed?
A takume is brought out and oiled.
Interesting. It sounds a bit like a tampume.
It does. That's where Myron Alfombra, pronounced Matting, got the idea to call his machine a tampume.
I see. What does a takume do?
It's a dangerous piece of machinery. There are 4,183 tiny blades that reach speeds of 6,000 revolutions a second. The machine sucks in impure vibes and machinates them.
This is an odd device. Can I see a picture? Oh, thanks! My word, that's a hell of creation. Your black and whites demonstrate an oak branch reduced to tiny dust like you find on a tiny URL.
How do you think his hands became so small?
I don't know.
He wasn't always a Republican. He had the hots for a chick in this organization, Mungo Slovenia, the most succulent... I can't say on the radio. She could have been a figure model. At any rate, he moved too fast. Over a fire of clean-burning coals, his hands were laid in the suction of the takume.
How did you ever find this out?
Misclassified information by a misclassified independent contractor. I shouldn't have mentioned this.
Oh, it's okay. This is a fake news show, but there are all sorts of industries minors aren't allowed to work in, being that the Takume is extremely dangerous machinery. Minors are not allowed to oil it. In fact, minors under 16 are not allowed to clean, wipe, or oil machinery. Nor can they work in any operation dangerous to their morals.
Then why is your son in charge of live streaming this particular show?
On YouTube, I hope you're live streaming with him. He's almost 16. After all, this is commercial radio. One's claim this content is not too moralistic. It's merely subjective. This is no worse than, say, certain conservative political broadcasts, which are rather opinionated.
There's more. The children of all ages have cleaning, laundry, chores, lots of chores, milking the goat, taking coffee cherries out of civet cat poop for the kopi luwak used in ceremonious coffee drinking, Meyer lemons. Oh, yes, peeling Meyer lemons grown by the skinlets.
Household labor performed for parents, that might be exempt. General household duties for the household the child lives in are not a violation of labor law. This might be news to certain minors these days, but asking a 14-year-old to do an entire load of laundry in order to wash his basketball shirt, in order not to waste water, thereby including clothing of the parent and siblings, is not a labor violation.
What if the goat milk is shared by non-blood family members who reside in the same home?
How many hours a week is this goat milking going on?
15 minutes per child.
I'm not getting too excited.
Neither am I. Can't we just go in and bust the organization already?
Well, I'm more inclined to do a thing like that if there is a possibility of you bringing your hatchet and us using it to bust the operation.
You aren't advocating bodily injury, are you? As you know, I don't carry a hatchet, but I've been known to carry a machete, my trademark machete that got me through the jungles of the Nicaraguan poppy fields.
Molly, you must control yourself. I had no idea you had a machete under your blazer. Please don't wave that thing in my face. We might get kicked out of this recording studio.
Would that be a bad thing?
That's a matter of opinion. You're listening to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I'm Karl Gerber, and I represent real employees. I can be called at 877-525-0700. Yes, if you have a case where you've actually been fired by your employer, sexually harassed, owed wages, maybe you want to bust a slave labor organization under the Private Attorney General Act. I'd like to hear from you at 877-525-0700. I hope you are live streaming this show on YouTube on the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. If you want to catch up on all the episodes, here the last time Molly Machete was here on episode 17, you can do that on YouTube under Karl Gerber or at workplacelawyer.org. So when we come back, we're going to find out more about this labor slave organization Molly Machete wants busted, but I want help taking Myron Alfombra, pronounced Matting, down. Talk Radio 790 KBC.
I'm in my car with no delay, in my chair, and I don't care to work the day away. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like morale is through the roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. I like coming to work on a Monday.
What a weirdo. What's wrong with this guy anyways? So anyways, this is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show on Talk Radio 790 KBC. We've been talking to Molly Machete, who's a workplace investigator. She got me involved in that little case of death by boredom at work with Anita Orchid Helms. It wasn't really dead. I've got her back here. She wants me to bust a slave labor operation. So, Molly, you've been describing a lot of work that these people do in the slave labor organization, and I'm wondering if any of the stuff you're describing is paid for.
Well, it's mundane operating the takume.
Bad choice of words for a lawyer. I do apologize. Can you please put your machete back into your blazer? I thought that was going to happen by now. Wherever it was in there.
None of the work is paid. Not even the thing with the cherries. Imagine that.
Well, how are these people forced into performing this labor for free?
Brainboarding. I mean brainwashing. All sorts of ridiculous dogma about peace, love, and understanding.
These people should be paid no matter how noble their work is, unless it's all volunteer work.
I would agree if this was just their way of life, but somebody's profiting in all of this.
I understand that coupe luwak goes for $100 a pound, but if it's used for ceremonial purposes, where's the profit coming from? The illegal booth at the Hollywood Farmers Market? Who's profiting?
The high priest! The high priest!
Gee, I feel like this show is reverting to early 70s. All of a sudden, there's all this talk about families revolving around the edicts of high priests. Take, for instance, just last week, this hippie girl. Well, I can't really call her a girl. She's 73, but she doesn't look a day over 26 because she took this potion.
Sunshine, a.k.a. Mary Jane Smith, born on a sunny day in 1945, imbibed a formula. Actually, just whatever was in the Venice, California canals back in 1970. And you know the shambles that place was in then.
How could totally polluted water stop people from aging?
I don't know. Do you think I always make meaningful conclusions in my workplace investigations?
Can you remind me why we're going to all this trouble to infiltrate Sunshine's, air quotes, family?
Nobody should be allowed to look 26 forever.
Interesting. I was under the impression we had to stop evil labor abuses.
We must. We must increase our rust. Decrease our rust. Emancipate all those ageless cult members. Hey, maybe one of them could sue for age discrimination on the basis they are way over 40, but they haven't physically aged.
The child labor angle wasn't really moving me. What about the never aging adults? Are they being forced to work for free?
Good question. Please read my report on that very issue.
You're handing me volumes of papers with brag clips on the sides. How many pages are in each of these volumes?
I follow appellate court rules and limit each volume to 300 pages.
You wrote over 1,500 pages on how the adults are being forced to work for free?
That's for you to decide.
I'm kind of looking through this. Could you just brief me on your conclusions? We have time on this show to... I don't think we've got time to go over 1,500 pages of conclusions, looking for the conclusions about whether adults were forced to work for free.
I thought you'd want to read all my conclusions.
The problem with the public is they don't comprehend the lack of uniqueness of their legal issues. They don't get the fact a judge isn't generally intrigued over a legal issue, nor do they have any concept of how many pages of legal briefs, pleadings, declarations, deposition testimony, and exhibits judges are given to read every day. Quite ankly, I don't know how the judges could possibly read all the dribble they're given. Actually, I don't think they do.
Actually, there's nothing in those 1,500 pages of conclusions about whether the adults were forced to work for free.
Great. Because you didn't think about the issue or because it's a non-issue?
I was more focused on the obligatory ganganitis ceremony they perform every afternoon at 3:11 p.m. in the yogi studio.
Well, in that case, I can hardly blame you. A ganganitis ceremony, after all. Listeners, have you ever even heard of the ganganitis ceremony? Clearly, there must be an entire sound-sharing site on the internet devoted to ganganitis ceremonies.
Something just came to me. Yeah, whenever people go to workplacelawyer.org to listen to old episodes of this show, at the bottom of the screen, it references similar results, and ganganitis ceremonies always comes up.
Right, but I've never seen that.
What have you seen?
Well, I've seen Iranian diaper crisis, Tampune, Remus Helms, of course, the important stuff we talk about on this show.
It seems you've forgotten the dynamic new field of sanitary napkin database management.
Yes, we need to get to that issue shortly. I'm trying to be thoughtful of your issues and get through them first.
My issues? Where do we even start?
Let's stay focused on unpaid work the family had to do.
You know, I'm not really concerned with that.
Well, I'm not either. My review of the Sunshine family member situation, if it's not worthy of a bring down, they chose to take the eternity potion like a lot of other mostly stewardesses from 1966 to 1972.
Mr. Gerber, I'm very disappointed at your attitude.
A private sector labor lawyer isn't around to shut down ways of life that don't violate labor laws. We use existing laws and reasonable extensions thereof to bring cases for monetary relief for our clients.
Are you going to help me shut down the family or not?
Thus far, reason has not exactly surfaced.
Then I am not going to help you shut down Myron Alfombra, pronounced Matting.
Then it won't be the world's problem when that database is exploited in order to effectuate the one sanitary napkin per menstrual cycle policy.
Is that his plan? He wouldn't dare.
He would so dare, and I wouldn't be surprised if a foreign power was backing him just to discredit the American way of life. It won't work. There'll be backlash. Women will be taken as political prisoners. An underground market will develop, strengthening the cartel system.
Now that you put it that way.
Indeed.
This is very exciting. The Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show has a villain. Does that mean I am a hero?
It depends on how you assist in the eradication of Myron Alfombra, pronounced Matting. Perhaps you can use your CIA connections.
CIA? Who said anything about CIA? How did you know?
I believe the database also has other purposes. It contains genetic markers for all menstruating women.
Okay, you have my commitment.
Is there a way we can turn Myron Alfombra, pronounced Matting, over to the authorities?
Are you suggesting a kidnapping?
That wasn't the first thought that came to my mind.
Yes,
but
yes.
as an attorney, I can't advocate any violations of the law. We need government cooperation for anything we do. Besides, we could be interfering with international policy.
Let's call it a capture.
A capture? Kidnap? Also, we can return the database to its lawful management?
Have you been in contact with Chapstick's employer? Why aren't they trying to do anything?
They claim Myron Alfombra got into their payroll as an employee, signed an overbroad arbitration contract where everything is subject to arbitration, including bathroom art. Arbitrators can't issue an injunction or an order that the database be returned, and this employer is not anxious to publicize this in court.
How many people listen to this show anyway?
Oh, not enough.
Can you get Queen's rugs on any labor violations?
Could I ever? I've compiled a little list here. Do you want to inspect it?
You're throwing the books at me. How many pages are in each of these volumes?
Well, I try to abide by appellate court rules. There are 300 or less pages in each volume.
Wow, you've got over 1,500 pages of legal violations here.
Yeah, I sort of went out on a limb. You're listening to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. I'm Karl Gerber. I'm a real workplace lawyer. I hope that Mr. Girardi considers me one of the good lawyers. I worked with him early on a class action and early on in my career when I was a young lawyer 25 years ago. And I've been doing employment labor law since really the dawn of that. It didn't exist too much before I started. And so after doing, 1,800 cases in California and a lot in other states, I'm admitted, I'm able to write some sketch comedy about it every week. And that's what I do. And I still do a lot of legal briefs. I just did a legal brief last week where on Friday, to get a class action settlement approved. And I brief all kinds of things. So I used what I know as a lawyer to do the show too, and we talk about legal issues this way. So if you have an employment problem, I do want you to call me at the office, 877-525-0700. We're serious at the office. We're not like this show. 877-525-0700 if you've been fired from your job. 877-525-0700 for one of the original labor lawyers that takes it seriously. When we come back to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show, you'll find out more about this little debacle with Molly Machete.
In my chair, and I don't care to work the day away. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel. I like coming to work on a
What a
Monday.
weirdo. I can't get over this guy. You're listening to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show on Talk Radio 790 KBC. And hey, man, Home Depot actually has a lot of carpet, and it's good stuff, by the way. And I just heard this commercial about your dream carpet. I'm just thinking, what if your dream carpet is actually something Myron Alfombra, pronounced matting, is selling in it? It's the same stuff that goes on your head as your townhome floor, and you have to tampume it. That's awful, and that's why I want to stop this guy, and that's why Molly Machete is supposed to be here. I was hoping to enlist her help in that, but she's telling me about some slave labor organization she wants to crash. So now that you've read my report of the labor violations I believe Myron Alfombra, pronounced Manning, is committing, do you have any comments, Miss Machete?
Yes, impressive. Very impressive. There's some very obscure labor code violations in your report. A division of Queen's Rugs set up shop in Alhambra. They gave payroll debit cards that were not drawn on a national bank, but on the bank of Myron Alfombra, pronounced Matting. He fails to include overproduction bonuses in the piece rate overtime calculations for the nylon farmers. An alternative workweek election was held, but the employer failed to pay the costs of the election. Salespeople may seek reimbursement for multiple hair plugs if the operation is done by Myron Alfombra, pronounced Matting, but not if it's done by a member of an opposing political party. Where did you get all this information?
I cannot divulge my sources at this time.
Could Alfombra, Eminem, really be shut down because his company failed to pay for the alternative workweek election?
Like so many labor laws, that violation will not cause the whole company to be shut down. It's just soy icing on the gluten-free fritter.
You like those too? Oh, they're simply divine.
Soy is my enemy, but I've heard the icing tastes like fried vegetable oil marinated in rosemary. I can think of few things as disgusting.
Mayonnaise marshmallows made from ostrich gum?
Ugh.
How does that grab you?
I tuned that out. I've got a mediation tomorrow.
Wow. Queen's Rugs fails to pay salaried employees in a negotiable check during months when Berber toupee sales are down due to multiple heat waves.
Yep.
Instead, they get a free tampume and a Berber toupee in leading carpet colors as designated by the IAPO, the International Association of Professional Interior Decorators. Hey, do you happen to know what these colors might be? I've been thinking of painting my living room.
Well, as you know, I happen to also be a home builder, so yes, I do know. Lime mousse is a hot one. Coral reef, which is an orange, white, and lighter pink, is quite hot. I'd recommend any of it for any sitting room, especially in front of a master suite.
Cool. They make orange, white, and lighter pink striped toupees?
Please refer to Exhibit 118 in the report. There's a photograph of that monstrosity.
Oh, it's ferociously frightening.
If you want to crash Suntine's family, you need to compile a list of labor code and other labor violations, attach interesting exhibits.
Yes, I should do that. I happen to have an image of superchild gardening that I think will really get you going. See?
Oh, she should at least wear sunscreen.
She hasn't been furnished basic safety equipment. If she were to sit on that raspberry bush, she'd have thorns in her bare bum.
My inclination on this issue is naked gardening is her choice or some type of spiritual expression.
The employee's choice to an independent contractor according to an illegal contract is irrelevant. Why should an employer not be responsible for their employees' naked gardening thereby subjecting the employee to heat exhaustion, bum thorns, thorns in their feet, cancerous sun rays, exposure.
Under the workers' compensation system, employers are liable for employee injuries even if the employee was negligent. If the employee went out on their own to injure themselves, maybe not.
I should have told you earlier. The family does not carry workers' compensation insurance. Now will you help me?
Well, I kind of tried to get at this before, but are the family members employees? Is this a cooperative working on something? Is this like a cooperative?
I used to live in New York, and my cooperative employed a doorman, and we insured him with workers' compensation insurance. I can't say too much about the doorman and what he packed and why I needed him and who else lived in the cooperative that needed a doorman with a concealed AK-47 assault rifle and who snipped him one day and how that was part of a political assassination attempt, not of me, but of my old boss.
I think we got the point about your cooperative. I sure wouldn't want to live there.
We need to shut this family down.
Well, first of all, there doesn't seem to be a reason to shut them down. A difference in opinion on how people should live is not a basis for shutting something down, but more to the legal aspect.
Why do you keep bringing things around to these legal points?
Well, this is supposed to be a show about employment law.
What?
We're supposed to cover workplace laws and scenarios.
You don't actually do that, do you?
Well, that's a matter of opinion.
Maybe I misspoke. There are 10 major cults operating in Los Angeles, 436 minor cults, 839 communes.
Are these recent statistics?
Let's not be so petty. I Am
was a Los Angeles area cult started after the Great Depression. Remember, I'm a Los Angeles historian. The leader met a stranger on a Mount Shasta hike who gave him a bejeweled gown and gave him the power to create wealth and energy. I Am is still active.
Yes. Next, the movement of spiritual awareness.
This operates as
Peace, Awareness Labyrinth, and gardens in the West Adams District.
See, the scenarios on the last two shows are actually still relevant.
I understand. Of course, there is the Source family operating at present out of a mansion in Los Feliz.
No, that ended in 1972.
Strange. I'll cross that off the top 10 list. Is the Symbionese Liberation Army operating strong in Los Angeles, or would you say they moved to the Bay Area?
Well, I'd actually say the leaders have all been convicted of murder or died. What is your source?
Remus Helms.
Oh, brother.
What's the matter? You have the Helms Foundation's $5 billion in assets and 14 inches of endowment sponsoring the show, but you think they're a bunch of nuts?
I'd rely on Remus Helms for certain pieces of information, such as how to successfully combine ostrich farming with the cosplay lifestyle. But otherwise...
Look, I know not everything is exciting as interrogating a Taliban terrorist who looks like a Manson girl, or even fighting terrorism by non-sexual buggery. But my whole bubble's been burst with this attitude of yours that labor laws can't be used to shut down an organization.
Bankruptcy can, and bankruptcy is often the result of a one lawsuit against an employer. You know, early on in my career, I shut down a machine shop for really retaliating against a guy for calling OSHA and calling him horrible racist names. So, you know, I've been there. It's not the most ideal situation for a contingency fee lawyer who will never get paid or get their costs back if they shut the company down they're suing.
Come on. Aren't there other ways to shut down an employer?
Private lawyers can't get criminal fines or cause a company to go into a cease and desist situation, which they don't stop the government. The government will shut them down.
Can't we stick this family commune, whatever it is, with a labor violation that carries a criminal penalty?
There are several sections in California labor codes that impose criminal penalties in the form of misdemeanors. They relate to willfully violating health and safety orders, making false statements and documents required to be filed or maintained pursuant to a labor law, failure to report a workplace death, for instance, failing to abet a safety concern after being notified that can cause a company to be shut down.
If we got the Department of Labor to fine the family over the takume and they kept using it, then we'd get them on criminal penalties. We could jail the high priest.
Really more applicable to our listeners. Retaliating against an employer for blowing the whistle, refusing to engage in illegal behavior, reporting suspected unlawful conduct to the government, or coercing or influencing political activities of the employee can result in a misdemeanor to the employer and its employees who engage in that kind of contact.
That's it! The family is required to only vote in meaningless elections, such as that hotly contested election in Hellhole Palms for assistant dope waxer.
I'm not sure that's possible. I believe it's a one-man, one-woman race, with each being the only voters in the forever after count an election that's tied, followed by a runoff, a recount, another tie, and so forth again and again until Hellhole Palms freezes over, which will never happen because, after all, it's Hellhole Palms.
We're gonna get him. I am not gonna let up until we succeed.
Let's take the we out of the equation insofar as the family. As to Myron Alfombra, pronounced Manning, I hope you're in all the way. Oh, right. You're listening to the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show, and I want to bust those employers who aren't doing good. Call me at 877-525-0700. Let's get you some righteous justice against a bad employer at 877-525-0700. We don't go after good employers, only ones that do you wrong. 877-525-0700. And we're going to get them like we talk about getting employers on this show if they've done wrong. So this is the Karl Gerber Workplace Lawyer Show. It is heard every Sunday from 7 to 8. Sorry about that. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you again next week.
I'm in my car with no delay, in my chair, and I don't care to work the day away. Clap along if you feel like morale is through the roof. Clap along if you feel like happy.
This show furnished by Karl Gerber and Employment Lawyers Group.